Perhaps the most admirable example of this is to be found in the wonderful last movement, the lamenting adagio, which gives the symphony its nom de guerre of Pathetique. It was bold and brave of Tchaikovsky to end a symphony with a tragic, slow movement, and perhaps it was willful and arbitrary too, but it works, and it works in an amazingly effective way. And one of the reasons that this finale does not seem like a separate entity, despite its unprecedented tempo and position, is that it is bound to its fellow movements by the same use of scale-wise motion. It is awesome to consider what Tchaikovsky could make from the scales practiced every day by pianists and singers and violinists. A dramatic first movement, a gracious and wistful second, a brilliant march, and now this heartbreaking dirge. This dirge is constructed around two themes, both of them born of the descending scale, which, as we said earlier, is the natural direction for scales to take in a pathetic symphony. The first theme is this. The second theme goes this way. Both themes are made of the downward scale, yet how different they are. The first, anguished and desperate, the second, noble and resigned. Between them and around them, other scale passages abound, gloomy ones, singing ones, plaintive ones. We might quote only the climactic section before the reprise or recapitulation, in which the scales gain speed until they become a whirlwind, much as they did in the preceding march movement. And almost the last sounds you hear in the symphony are the dying echoes of the descending scale. Now, I don't want to give you the impression that scales are the only unifying force in this work. There are others, chief among them the fresh and original use of the interval of the fourth. This is an interval that is very common in Western music, almost basic, we might say, since the two tones involved have a strong diatonic relationship. Think of bugle calls like taps, for example, or the theme from L'Arlésienne of Bizet. But Tchaikovsky uses the fourth in a new way. He builds fourth upon fourth, or in the descending version, creating a sound which is prophetic of Hindemith and much other 20th century music. Now listen to this bit of the development section in the first movement and notice the descending intervals of the fourth in the brass. Did you hear the fourths? This has always impressed me as brilliantly original on Tchaikovsky's part. But he is not content to use it only in one place. He has used these fourth constructions as a unifying factor throughout the work. In the reprise of this movement, the following passionate section occurs, building to its climax by ascending fourths. Did you recognize the intervals? On these intervals of the fourth, he builds his motive. But the real festival of fourths occurs in the third movement, the march. The principal theme is made out of these two intervals of the fourth, combined in a way that produces the familiar tune you all know. It is only hinted at toward the beginning, with the plucked strings showering sparks of descending fourths upon it. But later it appears as a full marching tune. But first, Tchaikovsky has more to say about the fourth. There is a piquant tune in the plucked strings and piccolo, combining fourths with our old friend the scale. You see how he piles up three intervals of the fourth like blocks to make this odd sound. And then, when it comes to developing his march tune, we are barraged with fourths exploding all over the orchestra. As if he is erecting great pyramids of fourths. One of the more subtle uses of the fourth occurs in the last movement, in which both themes are written so that they lie within that interval. The first theme, for instance, has for its extremities these two notes, which spell out a fourth. And the same is true for the second theme, which lies between these two poles, again a fourth apart. We could go on multiplying these examples, but this record has a time limit. One should mention, however, a few other unifying forces in this strange and powerful work: the constant use of the dark colors of violas, celli, bassoons, and low horns in a special mournful way which gives the work an extra pathos. Again, one could speak of the persistent use of dissonance, which spreads pain throughout the music. There are many others, too technical to go into here, but even what we have studied so far should arm us against those attackers of Tchaikovsky who refuse to admit him as a symphonist. After all, the sense of form is a delicate and elusive thing, and operates in many different ways. Tchaikovsky's way to unity may not be Beethoven's, but it is nonetheless valid, communicative, and deeply moving.